Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sky U Pod, your Golden Gopher football podcast of the College Huddle. Joining us today is Brian from the Boundary Corner, representing the Virginia Tech football team. Brian, thank you so much for joining us and previewing this game.
Hey, glad to be here. Glad to hang out with you guys today. Little day after the festivities, so glad to chop it up and talk a little more football before we get into the bowl, the flesh of the bowl season here with the new year coming around the corner.
Right, right.
Yeah, that's right. Brian, I think the first question, we kind of just talked about this off air, but everyone's rosters are in flux at this point with the transfer portal still open. Just briefly, what's Virginia Tech missing here from either opt-outs for either NFL draft or people that jumped in the portal? I know there's also some coaching changes over there as well. So what's it look like for Virginia Tech side of things heading into this bowl game?
Yeah, things are getting a little interesting on a couple position groups in particular. We've got one starting corner that's already opted out of the bowl for draft prep. The other is in the transfer portal, already accepted a transfer to LSU. And then both of our starting safeties are also in the portal. One Vanderbilt, and I think the other one is another SEC school. I think Auburn. So secondary is going to be guys that have seen a lot of time, but it's not going to be the frontline guys that we had most of the season. Flip it over to the offensive side of the ball. Not a ton of opt outs on that side, especially at the skill positions, but particularly wide receiver. I think we've got Jalen Lane. Won't be playing in this one, but Ollie Jennings will be here, and a bunch of the young guys that saw a lot of time at wide receiver will be there. We won't have Bayshaw Tuden. He's in draft prep mode as well. Our backup running back did transfer, so you're probably going to look at a whole lot of Coney in the backfield, which is kind of our number 3 guy primarily. Although for most of the season, Malachi Thomas was injured, so we didn't see a ton of him throughout the year. My biggest concern is going to be offensive line. We are down our center and our left tackle to the transfer portal. We did, defensive coordinator and offensive line coach got canned at the end of the regular season. So there's a lot of movement on the defensive side of the ball and a lot of movement at that position in particular on offense. So that's where our problem areas are going to be, is particularly the secondary and then looking there at the offensive line. The thing that's encouraging is that at quarterback, Kyron has been injured for the last about month and a half, 2 months, but we do have Pop Watson that showed out well against UVA in particular, had a really good game. So he's going to be holding down the quarterback spot for this contest. Excited to see what he does against what I consider a pretty quality Big Ten opponent here in the Gophers. So it's going to be interesting to see what we get out of him in this game and kind of how that sets things up for what could be a quarterback battle come spring for us.
Brian, I was going to ask you about that, about Watson here. I know that Drone has been hurt, I think, since week 9 for you all. So when you're comparing these two quarterbacks, do you like one over the other, or do you think that Watson can be that guy to maybe take the reins in the future for this Virginia Tech program?
That's a great question. You're looking at Drones. He's missed since week 9, but really those injuries go back about 3 weeks before that, where he played pretty injured. I would say from he got a little nicked against Rutgers early in the year, kind of started getting back into form, got injured again against Boston College, and then really that was the one that kind of I believe that was the foot injury that really kind of made him a shell of himself. And I'm really interested to see when he gets healthy what that's going to look like, because when he's healthy, he is a very good quarterback. But when he doesn't have his legs to complement his arm, he definitely gets into these lull periods in the offense where we have a problem moving the football. Pop is he's younger. Obviously, he's a redshirt freshman. Didn't see a ton of time until the last couple games of the season. Showed out pretty well against Duke. Had some head scratchers, but played very well against UVA, which the quality of the opponent dropped down pretty markedly there for that one. So it's really hard to get a good gauge of what he's going to be like. But I like the tools that he brings to the table. He's probably a little bit quicker than Kyron, but definitely on the smaller side. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can hold up, if he's going to be using his legs with any frequency. Whereas Kyron is kind of has that bigger build where he can take a little bit more punishment when he takes off with the football. So I'm interested to see. I think Pop is a little bit further along in his arm talent development than where Kyron was at this time last year. Kyron's just a playmaker. He's a baller. So it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out in the spring for them. Right now they both signed up, to be back in the spring. I don't know if one of them is going to, dip after spring, depending on who wins that battle. So that's going to be something that we'll keep our eyes on. But I like Kyron's full skill set a little bit better if we're talking about 2025 alone. But I think Pop's ceiling may be a little bit higher.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess sticking with the offense too. Virginia Tech does like to run the football. It looked like 57% leaning towards the run versus the pass. But does it seem like what they want to do is just control the clock and kind of, rumble the ball down the field? Or will they take some deep shots at times to try to make some explosive plays happen?
Yeah, we're definitely going to take some shots down the field to stretch the defense. And we do a lot of a really good job, I think, in the passing game of stretching the field horizontally to set up some of the shots vertically. Kind of get you biting on some of those quick outs, quick moves, things that get your eyes where they shouldn't be before you kind of take off up the field and be able to get some of those scheme throws down the field. So, we definitely lean on our run game first. It's definitely a run first offense. I think sometimes we maybe this season didn't run as much as we would have liked, particularly against Clemson. We had Bashal Tuden was kind of nicked up in that game. He kind of ineffective, didn't really have a lot of opportunities there. And for whatever reason, our backup running back at that for that game was Jeremiah Coney, and he didn't get a single carry, even though he was on the field for I think like 25 snaps or something like that. So we're like, the one thing this Clemson defense has struggled with is stopping the run. And for whatever reason, we can't get anything going here. We're not even giving the guy that's actually healthy any sort of run. So that was a little frustrating. But we're definitely an offense that wants to run the football. But we can take shots at every level of the field. So it's not just going to be a run first offense. We can definitely stretch the field a little bit as well.
Yeah, you mentioned a few guys on offense already, but what are the names that Gopher fans should just be aware of or to watch out for on the offensive side of the ball for the Virginia Tech this game?
In this game, it's going to be Pop Watson at quarterback. You're going to probably get a heavy dose of Jeremiah Coney in the backfield with Bashal Tuden opting out. At wide receiver, you're going to get a lot of Aiden Green, a lot of Ali Jennings, and you're probably going to start to see a couple of the young guys that are true freshmen that were very highly recruited get a pretty good run in this one as well. So look for Chance Wiggins and look for Brody Adams. Those are two other guys to watch for.
Is there one of those guys in particular that it's like the one you guys target down the field more as like more of the deep threat?
So Ali Jennings is going to be the guy that we're going to target down the field. He transferred in last year from ODU, where he was very very much a deep ball threat for that unit. Was at West Virginia before that, so he's a guy that has had a lot of success down the football field. He was injured for the majority of the year. He had a nagging hamstring injury at the start of the year and never really got going until kind of early to mid-November. But has really put up some good numbers in the last 2 or 3 contests. So he's going to be somebody that we'll probably try to get the ball to in this game.
Nice. And then, you guys moved on from your defensive coordinator. Well, I'll ask you if that surprised you at all, but does Pry, with his defensive background, does he call the defense or does he not do that?
He does not call the defense. So the first year
Okay.
he was here, he did call the defense, and then he
Okay.
passed it over to Coach Marv last year. So Marv has called 2 years worth of defenses for the Hokies. I would imagine that we're probably going to see, I think, Sean Quinn, who coaches the star linebackers. He is probably going to be the one calling this defense. He was a defensive coordinator and head coach for FCS before coming on to our crew as a linebackers coach. So I imagine he's going to be the one calling the plays unless Pry decides he wants to take over for certain periods of that game. But so look for Sean Quinn to call those. Again, hasn't called a game for us at this point, but has called games in the past.
Nice. Brian, I just had a quick question just about Virginia Tech in general here. Before the season began, there was a lot of talk that was saying that this Virginia Tech football team had the potential to be maybe a top 25 team, and maybe this season didn't really go that way. So, what were some of the problems with this team that, were kind of faced throughout the season?
Yeah, there was quite a few this season. I think the biggest one that we can really point to is these one score contests. We had a good handful this year where if it came down to one score, we weren't going to get it done. And a lot of times it was defense fading late. Offense would get us ahead. Defense wouldn't be able to hold them. End up losing a game that way. Looking at Vanderbilt, we took the lead late in that one after playing a pretty poor first half against them. And then just the defense couldn't get a stop. Kind of had a similar situation against Rutgers. Obviously, we had a late let down against Miami. So there was a lot of opportunities this year to win one score games that we just let go by the wayside. A lot of that was on the play and the lack of adjustment on defense in the second half in particular. So that was a big problem. I think offensive line, we ran the ball pretty well, especially when we had a good focus on it, but we were very poor in obvious passing situations where we were having 5 or 7 step drops. We couldn't hold up to a heavy pass rush, particularly at our right tackle position. So that was pretty problematic, and that's when we look at the other coach that got replaced, there's definitely a reason for that, both from a results on the field standpoint, but also from a lack of improving that position in the transfer portal and through recruiting at this point. So, really those are the big things that I think contributed heavily to us really underachieving. I thought we were going to at least be an 8-win team this year. I thought we had potential for even better than that, but I thought we'd at least win 8, given our schedule, given what we saw at the end of last year and how that team closed out the year. I thought we'd see at least a little bit of a ratchet up, and unfortunately, we were kind of playing for our bowl lives there at the end.
Yeah, we both have the Rutgers game in common. Each team wants that one back, so you're not alone there.
Yeah, that's a team that's solid, but they are not a good team, and that's one that, especially in Blacksburg, that you can't lose.
Yeah. Go ahead, Max.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna, kind of to take a step back too, just question about the entire program as a whole. I guess your thoughts just on where Virginia Tech's going, your thoughts on Brent Pry, and I guess this is kind of one of my favorite things about bowl season is we get to see a lot of teams that you don't get to face a lot of the time, so it's kind of fun to learn about some new opponents too. And I guess like you joked about, Kurt, it's funny that we both have the common opponent in Rutgers, so that doesn't happen very often either. But I guess your thoughts, high level, where the program's going, and do you like Brent Pry, or does the fan base as a whole like Brent Pry and what he's done for the Hokies?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I feel like other than those moments on between September and November, Brent Pry has done a lot of really good things for Virginia Tech. I think we've been winning the off season, for lack of a better word, and that's something that I think it's been a good thing because the prior regime absolutely, you go into a season, you feel like, all right, we're going to be 6-6 again. There wasn't that level of positive momentum. But I think this season kind of took the wind out of folks' sails a little bit, just kind of the way things wrapped up. I think that where I am is that I'm not out, but I need to kind of start seeing some results on the field before I'm fully bought back in. I think that this staff does a good job of finding players that fit what they want to do. They do a good job of finding folks in the portal, especially at skill positions. I think we've already done pretty well. I think in filling in the gaps that were created in the portal everywhere but offensive line. And I feel pretty good about where we're heading with that, with the hire of Matt Moore and who that, West Virginia already has in the portal. I think we've got some pretty good targets of bringing those guys in the fold, along with a couple other bodies that, may help us in some of those other positions on the line there. So I'm excited about the potential still, but I am kind of approaching a little bit more cautiously this off season than I did this
Yeah.
last one. Just because I'm not exactly sure what the on-field product is going to look like, especially when we talk about those one score and close games where we weren't able to close those out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Brian, feel free to shoot anything our way if you want before making this prediction, but we got to ask, how do you see this bowl game going, and what's your final score prediction for it?
When I was looking at this, I think that both teams, match up fairly well. I think if we were at full complement, or at least close to as full complement as one can get heading into a bowl game that isn't a part of the college football playoff,
Right.
I'd feel a little bit better. I think missing those offensive linemen in particular is going to be a problem for us. You're down your left tackle, you're down your center, arguably the two most important positions on the offensive line. And I think we've got a couple guys at left tackle that can hold up pretty well. I don't know if we've got a center on the roster right now that can play as well as Braylon Moore has this season. So that's concerning. And when I think about our ability to score the football, not having Bashal Tootin, who has really been a workhorse for us in the backfield. I like Jeremiah Coney. I think he's going to be a very good player for us in the future, but he's not playing at a level where Bashal Tootin is, who, could arguably be at least a day one or day two draft pick, depending on, what boards you're looking at. So, I think you guys are going to prevail in this one. I like a score of about, give me 27-21. But I think the Gophers pull this one out. I just don't think we quite have enough pieces in place right now to do much better than that.
Well, we like that. That's very close to my score prediction as well. I have the Gophers 27-20. For a lot of reasons you said, it just looking on paper, it just looks like the Gophers have more intact than maybe Virginia Tech does at this point. Gophers are going to be without. I just thought our left guard's actually going to be out as well, getting kind of surgery. He was out of eligibility after this anyway, but he's going to take his shot. I'm not sure if he'll get drafted, but he was our best guard this year, Tyler Cooper. He's having surgery, so he'll be out this game as well. So we are down 3 offensive linemen, but I don't know. There's just some guys that they're very high on that we'll get to see in this game, so that's kind of exciting for Gopher fans. Justin Wally, our top corner, is out. Cody Lindenberg, our best linebacker, he's opting out as well. But all positions that we've had guys that I feel like have played decent amount of snaps. So as a Gopher fan, we feel okay about that. But it's bowl season as well, right? Like they've been off for like a month, so you never know what team's going to show up. But yeah, I got a similar score. Gophers 27, Virginia Tech 20.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I think with those guys out for sure. So I like where our heads are at as far as the expectations. But it'd be nice to pull it out, as long as we don't pull what we did up at Yankee Stadium a couple years back when we had so many portal guys and opt-outs, where we just looked absolutely atrocious against Maryland, where we barely had enough guys to even dress out there. So
yeah.
I think that just because of all the transfers and everything, I think the Gophers have retained enough where I think they can get it done. So little similar, but I got 28-17 Gophers. I agree with you, Brian. It's a great matchup, I think, if you're playing at full strength. It'd be a pretty, I think, neck and neck toss, coin toss game. But I think that the Gophers just have the edge just because of the missing pieces that you all have.
I want to know what the record is for everyone picking Gophers. I don't know who's Max picking, but I feel like it hasn't been good when everyone's picked the Gophers to win the game. So we'll see how that goes.
Right. Yeah. Well, Kurt, you and I have the same exact score prediction. I've also got the Gophers winning 27-20. And Brian, like what you talked about with Virginia Tech's offensive line situation, hoping that's a huge advantage for us since our defensive line gets to stay fully intact and was definitely the strength of our defense outside of the secondary. But since we're going to be playing a run-heavy team, it's going to be pretty important if we can cause some havoc at the line of scrimmage on defense. And then offensively, too, still having Darius Taylor, giving him some time off to – he always seems like he's a little bit banged up and had a pretty big day against Wisconsin, but got a lot of time here. So hopefully you can have a big day as well. But, yeah, I guess just kind of some notes, too, on some of the Gophers bowl games recently. Flex 5-0 and coaching the Gophers in bowl games. And we've actually won our last 7. So hopefully that streak continues.
Woo! 3 of those came in Detroit, so we don't always bring that up, but that's okay. We'll take. It's a nice thing to throw out there.
There you go. Yeah, it sounds like you guys have had a little bit more bowl success than we have. Historically, we even seasons where we've done pretty well, we have never really fared that great in bowls. I think even Frank Beamer was like close to 500 in bowls. So,
really?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to look at, but. Yeah, I'm just hoping that we get a good game. I hope it's competitive. I hope that some of the young guys get to go out there and, get a chance against a pretty good level of competition. Get to see what they're made of, and have a good takeaway. Feel good about the game. Takeaway into the off season, regardless of win, lose, or draw here.
Right. I think that's what most fans have to look forward to at this point. Like when you're playing this late in the season, right, in a bowl game, and you're not in the playoff, it's just kind of like, well, what's coming down the pipe, right? Like you want to see kind of a peek ahead into what's going to look like next year. So that's something both fan bases can look forward to. And,
it looks like we're not going to get the monsoon that we had in the last bowl game last year in Annapolis. Right. We were playing Tulane and basically a monsoon last year, and they had a bunch of opt-outs. We're like, okay, well, we feel good about this game, and then we pretty much ended up running Kyron like for 2/3 of the game just because we were trying to take the air out of the ball and just run some clock and get on the board here and there where we could, but it was ugly to watch.
Yeah. No, I mean it happened. Bowl games are so tough in that way where it's like I said, like there's always a certain level of like who wants it more, it's kind of a pride thing to a certain point, and then there's just a huge layoff that you have to manage, that used to be a big talking point all the time with like the BCS era. They were always talking about the big layoff from the end of the regular season to the championship game. But
yeah, the only thing I can see as an upside for that is that we've got so many people that are kind of getting mixed in there that I'm not sure if a layoff is really going to impact us too much, because we're throwing in a bunch of new blood in a lot of this. Right. Like I said, most of our secondary, half our offensive line, and a couple guys in the backfield there. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of the Big Ten fans would be very happy to see PJ Fleck get Mayo dumped on his head. He's not everybody's favorite out there. So that's what we're predicting, but we'll see. Brian, go ahead and plug your podcast. Let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's Boundary Corner Podcast. We are Virginia Tech football specifically, but we'll cover other sports as well throughout the year. And you can find us at boundarycornervt.com. That's where you can check out all of our episodes. We got some articles out there from our lovely writer, Miranda Wilhelm. And obviously, any podcast platform, check us out on YouTube, go subscribe there. And yeah, we'll bring the best of Hokie Nation to you.
Thanks, Brian.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. For joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Awesome. Thanks for the time, guys.
Yep.
Well, that was Brian again from Boundary Corner representing the Virginia Tech football team. Yeah, guys, I think that ultimately we all kind of have the same kind of prediction, including Brian. I just think that Virginia Tech is just out a lot of pretty significant pieces, more so than the Gophers are. And I think that'll be kind of what I guess, will end their season, unfortunately. But still going to be a good game, I think. Cool matchup. A warm place for once for the Gophers, not in Detroit. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Although the Duke's Mayo Bowl seems to be tougher weather, if I remember correctly. It always seems to be rainy during it. And maybe it's just
Yeah.
sticking in my head from the last year or two, but yeah, it's a bowl game. It's down south. It's fun. Should be a good one. And Virginia Tech, right? That's just a fun team to play against. I could have said that when they're
Yeah.
still on here and give them more props, but Virginia Tech, I mean, that's a everyone knows. I know we're not at their stadium, but Enter the Sandman, they have arguably the best interest in all of college football. But
Hmm.
yeah, should be a fun game.
Yeah. Well, fellas, how about we just talk about some Gopher news here? Let's talk about the portal. Lots of active and Kurt Max add people, or correct me if I'm wrong here, but I've got this list of transfers since our last time we did a podcast. Um, UCF offensive lineman Marcellus Marshall transferring to Minnesota. That's a huge get for the Gophers, who are in desperate need of some linemen. Additionally, Washington offensive lineman Khalid Tafai is transferring to Minnesota.
That's the
Another
big
great
prize.
ad. That
Yeah,
is a huge prize for the Gophers. And then another offensive lineman from Kentucky, Dylan Ray. Um, I mean, three ads onto the, from the portal is huge. It's early, but still, nevertheless, I think it's big time. Uh, did get a couple of wide receivers too. UCLA wide receiver Logan Loya. He's transferring to Minnesota. Another good get. And arguably, probably the most exciting transfer that just came out on Christmas Eve, I think it happened. Um,
yep.
Gift that keeps on giving. Nebraska wide receiver Malachi Coleman is transferring to the Gophers. Great athlete, huge get. I feel like we're just in an abundance of riches right now, fellas. How are you guys feeling?
Yeah, I mean Malachi Coleman was like kind of like the cherry on top because I mean, our last show was like we were pushing the panic button for the offensive line, right? Because Philip
Yeah.
Daniels leaves, he had 3 years left. In comes the kid from Washington who now has 3 years left. Was I mean, I don't want to say like at least he's on the same caliber as far as portal interest out there. Alabama really wanted him. Kalen DeBoer was his old coach. They really wanted him. I think it was Michigan State that also offered him. He had a bunch of offers. UCLA, he also visited, I think was in his final three. So a lot of schools wanted him. I think it speaks to a little bit of the success of Dinkytown athletes and Gophers having a little bit of money to spend now compared to, years prior where they can get a guy like this. So, and he's played left tackle. So replacing Ariante Ursary with a guy you hope you can just plug in right away. I know there's other bodies competing for that spot, but this guy looks to be the favorite. So to get him in there, and then Marcellus, the guy from Central Florida, he's got experience everywhere. So I think he's projected maybe to be potentially the starting right tackle next year, but just a guy that brings great competition into that room and you know also allows guys to compete for every spot, right? If your right tackle body wins out, and whether that be Lewis or maybe Greg Johnson slides out, and this guy can play guard, and Ashton Beers goes back to center, it just gives you a lot of flexibility, right? Raising the floor, as I think PJ likes to say. So a lot of experience, a lot of potential, really good bodies. So it's looking good.
Yeah, it's exciting when you see more names coming in than guys that are going out, right? So it's nice to kind of reload here. Will be interesting to see how it plays out in the in the spring window, I should say.
Yeah,
How many of these guys stick around, or how many guys we end up losing once they kind of see how things might be playing out. But hopefully, hopefully we can retain the majority and not lose any key starters at least. Which so far it's been outside of Daniels, it's been pretty good. So it's
yeah.
you know, it stings when guys leave, but it's at least a positive when you look at it at the end of the day and can see that you're bringing in way more than guys are going to the exits. So
Right. Well, and spring portal, if you didn't know this, I keep forgetting. Like after spring ball, I think it's after spring ball, you have to be under that 105 mark. The NCAA passed that rule. So like we're going to see people leave. You're going to see
Oh
another
yeah,
probably 10 people leave in the spring. Um, I'm sure some of that will be guys that are battling for competition, but it also that's kind of the crappy thing about that rule is like the coaches have to probably send some walk-on type lower body that just happy to be there. They got to kind of kick them off the roster. So that's just kind of the day and age it is in college football. I think that rule was made with good intent, but I'm not sure it was fully thought through. I don't know. Like I
yeah,
don't think roster size is going to hurt the Gophers is like as much as it is a lot of other programs. Like I know Nebraska, they take a ton of walk-ons, so like they have to
right,
kick out a bunch of people, and I know it's supposed to be so like you're not like harvesting players or whatever, but at the same time, some of those walk-ons are just there because they're happy to be there. You know, they're otherwise
right.
they're down at the Division 2 and Division 3 level, but it is what it is. So yeah, you will see bodies leaving. Um, Talking about the receiver room in general, though, like it's fun, but it's still unproven, right? You're
Yeah,
losing. I mean, your top three pass catchers this year were Daniel Jackson, Elijah Spencer, and Darius Taylor, and you're bringing Taylor back, but your top two wideouts are gone. But it just you have a ton of competition. A
yeah,
lot of slot type bodies with the kid from UCLA, Loya, and the kid from Miami of Ohio. I think he played primarily slot, but can probably be both. You got Christian Driver back. Lemecki played slot, but can probably flex to the outside as well. And then those guys are going to have to emerge on the outside. That's where we're like least proven. But I think Lanier's got a shot to play. Tyler Williams, and then Coleman from Nebraska. Now that's the great thing for him, right? Like all this talent hasn't really put it fully together, at least in the eyes of the Nebraska people. So, and he's got 3 years left, so he might be a guy that might not play a ton right away either. But 6'5", explosive. We've been rooting for guys that can take the top off the defense. He's definitely one of those guys. So to have him out there on the outside, and I already said like Tyler Williams there with Georgia now too. So you got a lot of former. I think Coleman was almost a 5 or like a 5-star according to some people, and Williams was a 5-star out of Georgia or when he was with Georgia. So you got a lot of talent, a lot of athletic bodies in that receiver room now. So a lot of competition. I hope everyone sticks it out because I think a lot of them could play. But yeah, Drake Lindsey's going to have a lot of weapons out there if we can just make it all mesh. A lot of new faces playing together.
yeah. Is there, I guess, with all these ads, maybe our wish list for the portal changes a bit, in terms of ranking what we want at
Linebacker,
this point.
one linebacker.
Linebacker,
I keep rooting
yeah,
for it. But I want one of these athletic freaks at the linebacker position. You're losing Cody Lindenberg, and I just don't
yeah,
think maybe the coaches thought this, and obviously Cody was probably hoping for this. He ended up going on to have a really good year, and so he's going to take his shot at the NFL, even though he did have another year. But I think he did graduate. I think his extra year was from COVID. So
sure.
don't blame him at all for moving on. One
Oh,
just
oh, yeah,
obviously had a great year, and you have an opportunity to get drafted. I'm sure he heard something that gave him optimistic hopes to go. So, and he's
yeah,
had injury issues, right? So you probably want to take. You just came off your healthiest season you've had. You probably want to take your shot now to try and
yep,
go make it. So but anyway, just he was your most productive linebacker. I like Mav a lot as a middle linebacker, more of a run stopper. Devin Williams, I think, improved, but there's just after them, it's all unknown again, right? And they got some young
mhm,
guys they like, but again, we've seen this Gopher program before kind of take a little bit to get those guys up and ready to go. So yeah, for me, I want another linebacker, and ideally, you'd take another corner as well. I like the guys they got. They brought in the one. And they like Saquon Bryan, Ryland Kelly, they like as well. But one more guy with just some experience, I think, would be ideal. So another corner and linebacker for sure. But if I had to pick one, I'd want the linebacker personally.
Yeah, linebacker can definitely make the biggest impact with getting one guy, but at the corner position, you'd like to have a couple extra guys. Like we just saw with wide receiver,
Yep.
right? The top two, we just replenished with feels like 24 wide receivers, and right now we've lost our top two corners, but we've only got one guy coming in from the FCS level. So hopefully it's a good sign that they like the corners that they have in the room. Hopefully they all stick around. And same with linebacker too, right? I mean, we haven't seen if it's going to be who that middle linebacker is going to be, if they're going to slide Williams over, or if it's going to be because Ethan Carrier is kind of the up and coming freshman, right? I don't know if it's between him and is Gurley
Yeah.
still around too. Like, I guess I don't even know who is kind of the next guy to play Cody's spot.
Well, I think Carrier I think is the one that had the most hype out of high school. And there's somebody I'm so bad at remembering the names when they haven't really played yet, but there is a guy that redshirted as well this year, or maybe was a redshirt freshman, so it'll be his third year. I don't have the roster up, but there's some bodies, right? We just haven't seen them on the actual
Right.
field. So I'm sure we'll see some of those guys in the bowl game with Cody being out. So sneak preview there, and we brought back all the safeties too. So I'm sure Coleman Bryson is going to be like the Jack Henderson outside backer type role. So
Yeah.
Sweet. Um,
yeah,
yeah. I guess what we could talk about now, because I'm interested in what you guys think and our listeners. Uh, the first college football expanded playoff just happened. Um, I thought it was sweet, sweet matchups. You got a lot of home games there, great atmospheres. But a lot of what I've been hearing, fellas, is a lot of complaints that it was a boring first round and it was terrible. Nobody enjoyed it, blah, blah, blah. Frankly, I enjoyed it. And yeah, there was some lopsided scores, but it's college football. I feel like, you know, that can just happen. It is what it is.
they happened in the
I don't
old
know.
playoff too. How many times
Right.
did the 1 seed blow out the 4 seed in the old playoff? So I kind of agree with you, Shody. Like I didn't want this many teams in to begin with, but once you told me it was going to be hold home games and all this stuff, and I saw these first round matchups, I'm like, all right, that's going to be sweet. I didn't think it was going to all be as lopsided as it was, but you could feel the atmosphere still through the TV in all these games. I thought it was awesome, and unfortunately, we had to listen to ESPN, Kirk Herbstreit, Sean McDonough was the worst probably, Chris Fowler, who's the other one? Greg McElroy. Just sit there and complain and put down the playoff like while it was happening. I'm just like, can we not? Like, you guys were pushing for expanded playoffs. So basically, they just wanted more SEC teams in. That's all they wanted. That they just wanted more SEC teams in to it. When Tennessee, I think score wise, the SMU game ended up being worse, but competition wise, I thought Ohio State blew Tennessee out of the water, and that one was like the
Oh,
worst
yeah.
competition out of any of them. I know they kept trying to rag on Indiana, and yeah, it was ugly for a while, but I mean, Indiana lost by 10 points as a 7-point underdog at the end of the day. So I don't know what you're really, you know? And if we really want to get into that game, as much as Notre Dame controlled 3/4 of that game, they dropped an easy 2-point conversion and had another shot at the onside kick. It was almost an 8-point game with that second onside kick attempt that they almost got again. Like I thought that Indiana kicker was amazing at doing those back to back. Like you never see it. And he got 2 perfect bounces back to back off of it. So
Right.
yeah, I'm not trying to like turn the game into something it wasn't, but like Indiana was almost right there again at the end. So it is what it is. I mean, they just want to rip on the Big Ten, and Herb Street's just getting shredded online, and rightfully so. Like, and he tried to clarify it, and it didn't even make. I don't even think his clarification up. He's like, I just want what's best for the sport. So, and by what's best for the sport, I guess is what he means is what he wants to see in the playoffs. Teams he wants to see in the playoffs, which is just brands, people.
Right.
And Joel Klatt called them out, rightfully so. But like, I even feel like if it was all Big Ten teams, I think Klatt would step in. But I don't trust any of these TV people. They all have a vested interest in who they want to see play because they're contractually tied to these conferences. So of course ESPN's going to be putting down the teams that they don't have the rights to for 99% of the season. Like, yeah, they want to sell their brand. They've invested all this money into the SEC. Of course, they want it to be sold as the big and the best. And I don't care how many of them. Oh, that, and they're trying to walk it back. Like, yeah, that version of Ohio State probably would have beat anybody that night. It's just like, no. It's the reality is there's a top tier of teams. It's been this way for a while. There's probably 3 or 4 teams that have a realistic shot. Maybe more this year than other years. It's a little bit more parity, but Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, Oregon this year for sure. It's always going to be them, right? Last year it was Georgia, Ohio State, or they got bounced. Michigan, Georgia, Bama, right? Like those are the top teams, and it's going to be the top team still. No matter how many teams you invite, it's not going to go the way they want. They want like a 12 team with 8 SEC teams, and it's going to be 4 SEC teams in the Final Four. That's like their dream scenario. They were basically salivating that all off season about how all these SEC teams are going to dominate come postseason, and it didn't work that way, right? I mean, the closest game competition wise was Clemson, Texas. Clemson had a real shot there in that game, and Texas had the big run to put it away late. But again, that was a fun game. And that's where my frustration comes in, because you see like SEC fans come in like, you all think we're mad that Tennessee lost. We hate them just as much as you. And like, I don't have anything against the fans really of the SEC. It is weak if you're just championing your conference. If you're like, Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, oh good, our team that kicked our butt is now in the college football playoff. Like, I just hate that mentality altogether. So root for who you want to root for. That's what I'm getting at there. But it's the media, these SEC and even just casuals like Colin Coward's like, yeah, well, the first round playoff was a dub, but I think we can all agree Indiana should never get invited back. It's like, why? Because they had one of the closest games out of anybody. Like, it just stupid takes like that from these NFL people, this NFL media people, and then you had the ABC, ESPN people just going on and on about how Indiana shouldn't be welcome back. And why Kirk's getting destroyed is because that's the position he took right after Tennessee got blown out of the water, after people just like Herb Street were hyping them up about how Ohio State's in real danger. Ohio State's got terrible fans. They won't be happy with anything. And guess what? Ohio State showed up and just it was never a game. Tennessee got aided by penalties to get points on the board there and make it somewhat of on scoreboard alone. It looked like a game at half. It was over though. Ohio State did what they wanted at will, and Tennessee had to fight for every yard that they got. So, it's a reality that's easy to accept to everyone outside of the Southeast Conference. The top of the crop is the top of the crop. You can put as much teams as you want in, and you should. Like, I liked that. Like, Indiana had a great year and got to celebrate the postseason, and Notre Dame came out and played a great game and showed how legit they are. So, like, it was just annoying to have to hear about how they thought Ole Miss, Alabama, all these teams that just totally blew it and sucked against not great teams. How, like, we have to feel bad for them. Like, no. What made it bad TV was them bitching and moaning through the broadcast as Indiana's making this comeback. So, those are my thoughts. I'm with you, Shuddy. I thought it was a good thing for college football that these were happening at these home stadiums. Yeah, obviously I wanted closer games, but it is what it is. Herb Street can go cry over something else. I'm sure he's already got something. He's already back to posting about his dog, so I'm sure that one will win mascot of the year next year, and we'll all have to be trying that they oh, this is great. And it's like this whole thing is built around Kirk Herbstreit's feelings. Like, oh, Kirk's not happy. What are we gonna do? I know. Next year we'll leave out Indiana. We can put in undeserving, Alabama, Ole Miss. That way Lane Kiffin's feelings won't be hurt. He won't have to spend so much time tweeting about everything. And yeah, he lost to Kentucky. Yeah, he lost to Florida. He lost to Kentucky at home. Has all this talent in the portal. Yeah, he's failed basically every best opportunity he's ever been given. But you know what? It's what Kirk wants. It's what ABC wants. So let's just go along with it. No, it's stupid. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you pretty much hit on the head, right? Like, obviously it's better. It's more entertaining when the games are closer, but you can't just manufacture that either. And I'd
Right.
rather see meaningful games versus, even if it's a close game, there were opt outs happening in the Rose Bowl just a couple of years ago. Like, I'd
Yep.
rather these games be meaningful, and they are. And, credit to the teams, credit to Ohio State, Notre Dame, and the teams that do blow out their opponent in the first round. They still had to show up and win, and now they have to
Yeah.
prepare for the next opponent. Like, if anything, we know that, this next round, all these teams are deserving because they won, because wins do matter, Kirk, Herb Street.
Yeah.
And that's just what I think that gets missed. And I think if your opinion is it should be, the most talented or the best teams versus most deserving, I think those are two different arguments. And for the sake of the playoff, I think it has to be most deserving, meaning you won the
Right.
most games and didn't have any bad losses. You can obviously pick, you could easily say, and anyone could make an argument that Ole Miss could beat a lot of the teams in the playoff. That's very fair, but they didn't deserve to make it, and that's just the way it goes.
Well, and the problem with that argument is it's all in the eye of the beholder. I'm so sick of
Yeah,
Right.
hearing that these teams are more talented when Bama got their butts whipped by Oklahoma, who had to win that game to
right,
basically be in a bowl game. So that argument is so flawed, and just because they know, that's the thing. They're talking down
right,
to everybody like, well, yeah, we just saw them lose terribly, Ole Miss twice. But we know because recruiting, that's what they want to go off basically is recruiting rankings. So they want to devalue the whole regular season. And that's not an overreaction. That's what they want to do. And because when do you stop? See, what if
right.
Bama lost like on a Hail Mary in a game that they dominated against Auburn, but that's a rivalry game. So they would have picked up another loss. It's like, are they now less talented? No. But it's another game they lost on a fluky play. So what are we doing here? Of course, results should matter. And so if you're trying to make that argument, you're 100% right, Max. It should be most deserved because what else? Why else play the regular season games then? Oh,
Right.
cool. Like we got to be entertained for a few hours, but and why stop there? If Clemson would have somehow pulled off an upset over Texas, yeah, but Texas is going to do better against the rest of the teams in the field. So let's just move ahead, Texas. You know what I mean? It's just stupid.
Right.
Like,
And it's not like there aren't some style points involved here, right? Like, I mean, just ask Miami, like 2-loss
oh
team,
yeah,
they were out immediately. And not saying that they deserve to be in, but it's like it just depends on what sports network you're listening to. It's they're going to take one side every time. So it's
and this fake argument that strength of schedule doesn't matter when it does matter because that's
yeah,
why Ole Miss and Alabama and South Carolina even had 3 losses and were all in the conversation, and one loss Indiana barely got in over them. So don't tell me strength of schedule doesn't matter when it did. It's how we got where we are. So
right.
Fat Boy Yogi, thanks for tuning in. Chimes in with Row the Boat. Charlotte, hope you're ready for Fat Boy Yogi. Yeah, man, enjoy the game. I wish I was going a little too close to the baby's due date for my comfort, so we're gonna stay home. But that would be a fun one to go, and I'm sure with Jaw Joyner likely. It sounds. I don't think it's been official, but it sounds like Jaw isn't gonna play. So I'm sure Jackson Howard is gonna see a lot of playing time, which again, that's what's gonna make this super fun. It's just seeing all these
Right.
guys that are gonna be, contributed in roles this year and that are gonna have bigger roles probably next year, get to see them play in this game. That's what's going to make this bowl game awesome. So enjoy it, Fat Boy Yogi. I'm sure it'll be a good one. And yeah, Mayo Bowl, man. It's a good bowl game.
It
Hmm.
is interesting how these kind of turn into just like it's almost like just a early preseason game for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Well,
the
when
value
you've
of
been
it.
done for a month, right? Is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
You're playing in 2025 already, so
yeah.
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 Well, fellas, want to pick some of these college football playoff games?
Yeah. To a point Max made as well, though, just like props to these teams that came out and throttled their teams. Like, I'm way more excited now for Notre Dame, Georgia than I was
Oh yeah,
prior to this game. Like, I really felt
definitely.
like, yeah, this is fun, but Georgia's looking pretty deadly. Well, now their quarterback's out, and now, I thought Notre Dame had a good defense, but again, like, I didn't know who they played because they didn't play a ton of
Right.
great teams, and so they proved it. And does that mean Notre Dame should not have been in prior to that game? Of course not. Like results have to matter, and look where they are now. So yeah. Let's pick these games.
All right. Lots of cool matchups here. We'll start on New Year's Eve. Penn State against Boise State, for the VRBO Fiesta Bowl. Penn State, 11-point favorites. I'm going to go with the Nittany Lions.
Gosh, I am too. I don't like it. What's the over under for this game? Because I feel like Boise is going to score a little bit here early on them. Maybe not, but
Yeah,
I just feel like there'll be some points early, and then I think once Penn State sees like the curveball, right? We all know what's coming. It's Genchi,
yeah,
right, out of the
yeah,
backfield. So
right.
once they kind of see whatever the counters off that Boise's got ready, I feel like Penn State's going to settle in, and I do think that Penn State's going to get the job done.
Yeah. Over-under is 52.5.
Yeah, that's about right, I guess. I don't know. I thought
Yeah,
Fat Boy Yogi's with us. He's got Penn State.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Penn State, like, yeah, that's just be so much for Genty, and he's gonna have to keep up too because Penn State. I mean, Boise State's defense is not like. I know Penn State's defense is
It's
their
not their
strength, but like
strength.
their offense, Penn State's offense can still score. I mean, look what they did with Oregon.
Right.
So it's gonna be tough to beat a
Boise's
track
defense
meet
has
when
been iffy.
right.
Yeah.
So for that reason, that's Penn State's kind of got the
Yeah. And it is neutral field, so that helps out
Yeah.
Boise, I think, because we saw how SMU had a good offense, and boy, that got turned on its head quick, right? I mean, they moved the
yeah.
ball, and then
Yeah.
it's just turnover,
Yeah.
but that can happen in Death Valley, so
Yeah.
there in Beaver Stadium. So
Yeah. All right. Transitioning to New Year's Day. First game of the day will be Texas against Arizona State for the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Texas is 13.5 point favorites. I'm going to go with Arizona State. I think that they can cover that spread.
I want to pick Arizona State, and it has nothing with Texas being in the SEC. It really doesn't. I like Arizona State's coach. I like their story, how they're picked basically last, and they came out and won it. I think people can score on Texas. People have been able to move the ball on Texas now. So, yeah, it's similar. You know what, though? But Clemson did it also and ended up not covering just because of the breakaway touchdown. So I think it's going to be somewhat similar in that respect as far as the spread. I think Arizona State will kind of be covering for most of it, and then I think Texas pulls away late. So I'll take Texas against that point spread.
Yeah, I don't feel good about it. I'll just take Arizona State, just covering the key number there, but it's going to be, it might be close. It might be a backdoor situation.
Sure. See, Yogi says, these who I want, I don't want a top four in the Final Four. Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas. That'd be sweet. I mean,
Yeah.
that would be an amazing Final Four. So I
Mhm.
would have no complaints at all with those results.
Yeah. Yeah, the next game is that Rose Bowl, Ohio State against Oregon, 4 p.m. on New Year's Day. Ohio State, surprisingly to me, is a 2.5 point favorite. But I gotta say, that game that they did look like probably the best team of the weekend when they all
Yeah,
played.
I can't figure
But
out
I
their
gotta go
offensive
with
line, man.
Oregon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I think that Ohio State can definitely beat them, but I have to. It's one of those things I have to see it to
Yeah,
like
right?
believe it. So I got to go with Oregon.
I think I'm in the same boat. Like, I didn't think I don't think I gave Ohio State a huge chance before the Tennessee game, but their O line held up, right? And that was the biggest question mark. But Oregon is still going to put up points. So can they keep going? I think it's going to be similar to the first game. I think it'll be a lot of points. Oregon as an underdog, I'm going to just take the points and go with Oregon. So hoping Ohio State wins personally, but that game's going to be great.
Yeah, I'll take Oregon as well. I'd probably take whoever is just going to get points in this one because it's probably going to come right down to the last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And lastly, to cap New Year's Day off, the Sugar Bowl, Notre Dame against Georgia, another cool game. Georgia's 2 point favorites. Give me them
Man.
Irish. I just think that with Beck out, even though their backup's pretty good, Georgia's a great team in general. I just feel like this Notre Dame team has been humming, especially their defense. Give me the Irish.
This is going to be an extremely physical game. I'm really excited for this game. And then also just two great brands, obviously Notre Dame and Georgia. So it's got a lot of great things. I think one thing that does scare me is Notre Dame lost that. I think he's a DN in that Indiana game, and he's done for the year. And he was playing pretty well, and from what I've gathered, he is an important player to that defense. So that gives me a little bit of concern here. I think I just have to see someone knock off Georgia, so I'm gonna take Georgia -2, and that's really my only rationale. Like, I think Notre Dame has an amazing chance to beat them, but I'm gonna go with Georgia, and this is coming from someone who picked every game wrong last week. So, yeah, I'll take Georgia.
Yeah, I really do want Notre Dame to win this one, but I think I am also going to go with Georgia covering. Just getting the extra time, and like I know it's their backup quarterback, but he's got all that time to prepare. And I just trust Kirby Smart more than Marcus Freeman. Like, I
Yeah,
know Notre Dame's looked a lot better this year, but I just, like you said, I have to see it to believe it. And at this point, I'm gonna put my faith in Kirby Smart.
they need that back to be healthy. Notre Dame, the one that had the huge.
Yeah.
He had a couple amazing plays, but it sounds like he was banged up a lot through the year, and he looked banged up again in that game by the end. So hopefully he's rested up and ready to go just to give us the best possible game. But yeah, I think this format's been awesome, and a lot of people are like, now we're getting Ohio State, Oregon in the quarterfinal, but it's like at least we're getting it like in the playoff.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, you're
yeah,
not
both these
guaranteed.
teams, yeah, both of these teams could win the Natty, and so you're gonna get basically how many times have we gotten to a playoff and been like, the LSU Clemson year comes to mind where we're like, I really would have liked to seen that Ohio State team versus LSU. Well, this is one of the matchups that we're getting to guaranteed see, and we could see them, the winner of it, win it all against whoever. So
Yep.
that's the way I look at it, at least. So I like it. I'm not complaining at all, and it's gonna be playing the Rose Bowl. I'm not unhappy
Yeah.
about that at all.
Right. And for either of these teams, whoever wins it, if either does make the championship game, it's not like you can't argue that they didn't deserve it, right? Like they did
Oh
not have an
yeah,
easy path at all. So it's nice to
Yep.
see when teams can prove it.
I think the winner, depending on the game, but I think the winner of that game, I do think they're gonna win it all, just with how Ohio State looked and how Oregon's looked all year. I'm not
Yeah.
sure anyone's gonna slow Oregon's offense down enough. I mean, Tez Johnson, is it Tez Johnson? Is that
Yeah.
the name? Yeah. I felt like he had all this hype into this season. Not that he didn't have a good regular season, but I was like, yeah, but he's expected to be a good pro, so he got a lot of the love and the awards. And then you watch him against Penn State, and it's like they had no answer for him. So I'm excited to see that matchup in this one.
Yeah. It's gonna be another great day of college football. Um, yeah, fellas, anything else?
Bowl season, January 3rd, good to see the Gophers play, obviously. And I'm just going to enjoy the guys that are still out there, right? Get to see Max Brosmer one more time. Carroll said he's playing, so good to see he was a great addition in the portal from a few years back. So getting to see him go out one more time. I think Ethan Robinson's playing. Timothy McMillan says, go ACC. Well, fair enough. Support your conference. I'm assuming you're going Virginia Tech then. But yeah, just again to see those guys play one more time, right? I believe Elijah Spencer's playing for one more game to put on tape before he hopes to go pro. So guys like that, and I'm not, that's not a slight against guys that are opting out. It's just another reason to tune in and watch. And just like PJ says, it really is just a celebration of the season that you had at this point, and with a little bit of a sneak preview at guys you're going to see next year. So yeah, should be
Yeah.
a fun game.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone again for tuning in to another episode of Sky U Pod. Be sure to like us on X, YouTube, and wherever you listen to your podcast. Go ahead and check out our partner's website, thecollegehuddle.com, to check out a lot of different college football podcasts, as well as seeing some articles. Um, but as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Go Gophers.